Hello and welcome to Chapter 2, Exploring the ZBrush Core UI. So when we first launch the ZBrush Core, our home page is going to pop open. This page is going to give you links to any news that's happening at Pixelogic, any maybe new videos that are being put up for the ZBrush Core, or any other things that we might feel inspire you as an artist to see work that people have been doing with ZBrush. Along the top right here, we have some options. So we can close this home page by clicking that X. We can minimize our home page by clicking this icon. And clicking on the little gear icon, we can control how this home page opens up at launch. So we can always have it open. We can show it only when there's new news, or never show it again. So I'm going to keep it in always showing. So we're going to close that, and we're going to close this home page. Now we're inside the ZBrush Core application itself. You'll see that we start with a sphere because we want you to be able to get right in and start sculpting. We're going to get into this later on within the video series. The first thing I want to do is break down this UI for you so you can feel a little more comfortable. So the first thing that you want to know is as you scroll over any button or slider within ZBrush Core, you'll see that there's information popping up. But what's key to some of this information, as you can see here where it says perspective distortion, there's also a P. That P is telling you the actual shortcut to come in and out of perspective mode. So instead of just clicking on the button like this, where we can turn perspective on and off, I can be working over here on my model and just click that letter P on my keyboard, and you can see perspective turns off, hitting again turns on. So you can see another example of this is in the polyframe. Shift F will turn our polyframe on, and Shift F again turns it off. So besides giving you any shortcuts that are already set to any of the buttons or slider within ZBrush, by holding the control key and just hovering over any buttons or slider, we give you information about the particular button or slider. So you can actually learn right within inside ZBrush itself. So let's continue this journey of looking at our UI. Along the top, you're going to have your menus, or which we will call palettes. These are set in alphabetical order. So all I have to do is click on any of the words, and you can see our palettes will open up to allow you access. We'll definitely dive into these palettes further on down the series, but I want to continue on to the next section, which is this section right here. I kind of call this like the sculptural paint section because these are key sliders or buttons that you'll be using as you sculpt or paint when using the ZBrush Core. But let's first take a look at what this homepage button does. So by clicking this, we open up that home page again. So this is a way for you to even continue to, hey, what was that news again that I saw? You can click on that home page button and get access to that. So let's close that. And now let's click our Lightbox button. This is our internal browser that we've put inside the ZBrush Core to allow you to load projects easy, to load materials or noises or anything else that you might want to load easy into the ZBrush Core. So just by tapping on any of these words, you will see all the items pop up. So if I go back to my projects and I decide instead of starting with the sphere, I may want to start with this slab here. So I click once to highlight it. I'm going to double click twice, and ZBrush is now asking, do I want to save that current project that I've been working on, which in this case is this red sphere. I'm going to say no, and you can see now we're ready to go with this slab of block to start sculpting on. So as we continue down this part of the UI, some key options or features you're going to use is your draw size, which you can see the shortcut is S, our focal shift, our intensity, and our Z sub and Z add. These are major sculpting sections. So when we're sculpting on our surface, we're really going to be using these two buttons and this slider, along with adjusting our draw size. So as I turn this slider up and down, you can see my draw size gets larger. And that focal shift is that inner circle. So you can see as I move this, my inner circle is changing. So think about this as kind of like a fall off, like you would have in, say, a 2D painting application. So that distance now between those two circles will be a little more softer between the transitioning. So when we start to get into painting, we're going to be using these three buttons along with this slider. So continuing on down the UI, we have options here along the right, which is kind of our navigation section or option section to, like we've already done in the video, turn our perspective on or off. Maybe we want to turn that floor grid on or off. And we want to maybe access the navigation through a button. So clicking on our move will move our object. Scaling will actually zoom in and out. And our rotate is going to rotate our object. So you can see these are just some options for us to turn on or off and also have our navigation available. Along the bottom here are very popular brushes. So these are our 3D brushes that as we click on these, you will notice that the brush icon here at the top left is being updated. So as I cycle through these, this is actually cycling through the major brush palette. So I can access my brushes by clicking here, or I can even click on this large icon, and you can see the brushes that are at the bottom are also available to you here in this menu. Please also note that if you hit the B key for brushes, that'll also pull up that same menu. So then the icons here along the left are quick access to maybe one of our palettes. So again, if I click on this large icon, you can see that brush palette opens up. This is the same thing as me going to our brush palette and clicking on the large icon here. You can see this does the same action. So if I wanted to load, say, a texture, I could actually just go to our texture option here and decide what texture I want to load. Again, this is the same thing as going to texture and clicking on this large icon. You'll notice that when I'm in the texture palette and this is highlighting, it's also highlighting down here because we're in fact clicking on the same button. So again, continuing this, I can change my materials by clicking on my material and saying, hey, I would like to use the basic material 2, or you know what, I want to use basic material instead. Maybe I want to add some color, so I can adjust my color quite quickly here by just moving through the color wheel. So this is just allowing you quick access to any of the menus, or we call palettes, along the top. Now, if we go all the way to the right, you're going to see an option here to scroll up and down any palette that's docked. So we call this our tray, and right now the tool palette is docked. So if I was to click here on tool, you can see that it shoots back over to the tool palette, but if I let go, by default, we've docked our tool palette here on the right-hand side. And we will definitely be diving more into this particular palette throughout this series. This is the #1 palette you will use when using your ZBrushCore, so you probably will want to keep this docked as it is in the default here. But you might want to start adding more items to be docked on the right tray. So all we have to do is open up any of our palettes, and you can see there's an icon right here that's a circle with an arrow. Just click and drag over, and you can see that now our tray is highlighted. And when I let go, you can see now not only do we have the tool palette docked in this tray, we also have the stroke palette docked in this tray. And we can open and close these palettes by just clicking on the word stroke or even clicking on the word tool. So they're not removed from the tray, it just allows us to open and close them. If I do now want to remove my stroke palette from the tray, I just click again on that little icon, drag out to the empty spot of our document, and let go. And then you can see that palette is now removed from that tray. Take note that also on the left side, by clicking on the icon here with the double arrows in the bar, there is another tray on the left-hand side. So you in fact could dock palettes on either the right or left-hand side. The last thing we want to take a look at is our document. So that's the space here which we're going to be spending our whole time in. And this is where we sculpt and we paint. So as we're working with any of our brushes, so I'm going to select my clay buildup, and I begin to start to sculpt, you can see that the surface is changing, and we're able to now to start moving along to do some sculptural element to this piece that we've been working on. Before we start diving into these 3D brushes, let's take a look in Chapter 3 how we start to navigate our meshes within inside the ZBrush core. Thank you for watching this video, and I look forward to seeing you in the next chapter.